The Galactic Assembly Station floated in the darkness of space like a massive wheel of silver and light. It was 3 kilometers wide, home to thousands of aliens from 47 different species. Ships came and went every hour, carrying diplomats, traders, and soldiers. The station had stood for 200 years as the center of galactic politics and power. Today was different. Today, humanity had finally arrived. Captain Tae-sung stood on the bridge of the Meridian's Hope, watching the station grow larger on the main screen. His ship was small compared to many vessels docked at the station. It was only 400 meters long, powered by fusion drives that humanity had perfected over decades. The ship gleamed white and blue, with Earth's symbol painted on its hull. "We're being scanned again," said his communications officer. "That's the 5th time since we entered the system." Tae-sung nodded. He expected this. The galaxy wanted to know everything about humanity before they even said hello. Let them scan. They would see a modest ship with reasonable weapons and standard shields. Nothing threatening. Nothing impressive. Exactly what Ambassador Jisun wanted them to see. Ambassador Jisun stood beside him, dressed in a simple gray uniform. She was 50 years old with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, studying every alien species, learning their languages, understanding their politics. She looked calm, but Tae-sung knew she was recording everything in her mind. "Nervous?" Tae-sung asked quietly. Jisun smiled. "Not at all. Everything is going according to plan." Tae-sung wondered what plan she meant. Earth Command had been very secretive about this mission. He knew they were here to request membership in the Galactic Assembly. He knew humanity wanted to trade and share knowledge with other species. But Jisun acted like she knew something important that no one else did. The Meridian's Hope docked smoothly. The station's automated systems guided them to a small bay near the diplomatic quarter. As Tae-sung and Jisun walked through the airlock, they entered a world of strange sights and sounds. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some had fur, others had scales or skin that changed colors. 2 guards met them at the entrance. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, wearing armor that looked heavy. They didn't speak but gestured for the humans to follow. Tae-sung kept his hand near his sidearm just in case. The assembly hall was enormous. It rose 10 stories high, with seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Hundreds of aliens sat in those seats representing their homeworlds and species. The room buzzed with conversations in languages Tae-sung couldn't understand, even with his translator implant. At the highest seat sat High Counselor Theron, a Keltharian who had lived for 3 centuries. He looked like a tall, thin lizard with purple scales and intelligent golden eyes. He raised one clawed hand and the hall fell silent. "We welcome the humans," Theron said, his voice deep and clear. "You may address this assembly." Jisun walked to the center platform. She stood alone under the lights with hundreds of alien eyes watching her. Tae-sung felt his heart beat faster, but Jisun looked perfectly calm. "Honored members of the Galactic Assembly," she began, "humanity comes before you with respect and hope. We have watched you from the edges of known space for 50 years. We have learned your languages and studied your cultures. Now we ask to join you as equals, to trade with you, to learn from you, and to share what we know." A rumbling sound came from one section of seats. Tae-sung saw a massive alien stand up. He was 3 meters tall, covered in red scales with arms thick as tree trunks. This was Elder Vrax, leader of the Vraxian Concord, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Equals?" Vrax's voice boomed through the hall. "You arrive in one tiny ship and ask to be our equals. We Vraxians have 5,000 warships. Our smallest destroyer is larger than your vessel. You use primitive fusion drives while we have mastered quantum tunneling. What makes you think you are equal to us?" Other aliens laughed. Some nodded in agreement. Tae-sung felt anger rise in his chest, but Jisun's expression didn't change at all. "We do not measure worth by the size of ships," Jisun replied calmly. "We measure it by wisdom, by preparation, and by what a civilization can achieve when properly motivated." "Pretty words," Vrax said with a sneer. "But words don't matter in this galaxy. Power matters. Ships matter. You have neither." The assembly voted within an hour. Humanity was granted probationary status, which meant they could trade in certain sectors but had no voice in galactic decisions. They were treated like children who needed to prove themselves worthy. As they walked back to the ship, Tai-sung felt frustrated. That was humiliating. They treated us like we're nothing. They treated us exactly as I expected, Ji-sun said, and exactly as we needed them to. Back on the bridge, Tai-sung found a coded message waiting from Earth Command. He decoded it carefully. The message was short. Package arrives in 72 hours. Maintain position. He showed it to Ji-sun. What package? She smiled, and for the first time, Tai-sung saw something almost dangerous in her eyes. The reason we're really here, Captain. The reason I let them insult us without defending ourselves. In 3 days, the galaxy is going to learn what humanity truly is. Until then, we wait. What are they sending? Something that will change everything. Tai-sung wanted to ask more questions, but Ji-sun had already left the bridge. He looked out at the massive station, at the thousands of alien ships coming and going. He thought about Vrax's mocking words and the assembly's dismissive laughter. He wondered what could possibly arrive in 3 days that would make any difference. Humanity had been watching the galaxy for 50 years. They knew how powerful these alien civilizations were. What could one ship do to change anything? But Ji-sun had never been wrong before. She had planned this mission for 2 decades. If she said something was coming that would change everything, Tai-sung believed her. He just hoped she was right. The next 3 days would determine humanity's future among the stars. Either they would remain as children in the eyes of the galaxy, or something would happen that would force everyone to see humanity differently. Tai-sung returned to his quarters and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. He kept thinking about that message. Package arrives in 72 hours. What package could be so important that Earth Command had planned everything around its arrival? Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, something was coming. Something big enough to make Ambassador Ji-sun smile like she held the galaxy's biggest secret in her hands. Tai-sung decided he would find out what it was very soon. The first alert came 48 hours after humanity's humiliating appearance before the assembly. Dr. Mi-young was in her laboratory aboard the Meridian's Hope, studying galactic star charts when her sensors started screaming warnings. She stared at her screen in confusion. Something massive was approaching the Veltara system. The gravitational readings didn't make sense. The mass was enormous, like a small planet, but it was moving, not drifting, moving with purpose and speed. Captain Tai-sung to the lab immediately, she said into her communicator, her voice tight with urgency. Tai-sung arrived within minutes. What's wrong? Mi-young pointed at her screen. Something is coming. Something huge. Look at these readings. Tai-sung studied the numbers. His military training helped him understand what he was seeing, but understanding didn't make it less shocking. That mass signature? That's impossible. Nothing that big can move that fast. The readings are correct. I've checked them 5 times. Mi-young looked up at him with wide eyes. Captain, whatever is coming will arrive in about 14 hours. And if my calculations are right, it's accelerating. Within the hour, every species at the station had detected the anomaly. Panic spread through the assembly like fire. Emergency meetings were called. Scientists argued about what the readings meant. Some thought it was a rogue planet somehow thrown from its orbit. Others feared it was a weapon from an unknown enemy. The Vraxian fleet mobilized first. 50 warships left the station and formed a defensive line between the anomaly and the station. Elder Vrax appeared on every screen in the station, his scaled face set in grim determination. We do not know what approaches, he announced, but the Vraxian Concord will defend this station. All civilians should prepare for possible evacuation. Tai-sung watched the Vraxian ships on his screen. They looked impressive, bristling with weapons, but he noticed Ambassador Ji-sun standing beside him and she was smiling. You know what's coming, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Is it dangerous? Not to us. Not to anyone, really, unless they're foolish enough to attack it. Before Tai-sung could ask more questions, Ji-sun requested an emergency session with the Galactic Assembly. High Counselor Theron granted it immediately. Everyone wanted answers, and the humans seemed surprisingly calm about the approaching disaster. This time, the assembly hall was packed. Every seat was filled, and many aliens stood in the aisles. Fear was thick in the air. The aliens who had mocked humanity 2 days ago now looked at Ji-sun with different eyes, hoping she had information that could save them. Ji-sun took the central platform again. Honored Council, she said clearly, I have an explanation for the approaching mass. Speak quickly. Theron commanded. His golden eyes were worried. That is not a rogue planet. It is not a weapon. It is not a threat. Jisun paused, and her next words fell like stones into water. It is one of ours, the hall erupted. Aliens shouted in a dozen languages. Some laughed in disbelief. Others demanded proof. Elder Vrax's roar cut through the noise. Impossible. Nothing that massive can be moved by any species we know. You lie to create chaos. I do not lie, Jisun replied calmly. In 12 hours you will see for yourselves. I suggest you recall your warships, Elder Vrax. It would be unfortunate if they were damaged when our vessel arrives. Your vessel? High Counselor Theron leaned forward. Explain yourself, Ambassador. Humanity builds ships differently than you do, Jisun said. When we reached the stars, we decided we would never be trapped on single worlds again. We would never depend on one planet for survival, so we built ships that could carry entire civilizations. We call them Titan-class vessels. What approaches is the Eternal Endeavor, one of 12 such ships humanity has constructed. The silence that followed was absolute. Then everyone tried to talk at once. A Vraxian navigator named Pelkoth was frantically working at his station. He was younger than Vrax, more interested in science than politics. He had been studying the limited star charts humanity had provided. Now he pulled up those charts and compared them to galactic maps. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human-controlled territory was far larger than anyone had realized. They had colonies on hundreds of worlds, trade routes spanning dozens of sectors, and if they truly had 12 ships of this size, Pelkoth ran to Elder Vrax with his findings. Sir, we may have made a serious error. The humans have been very careful about what they've shown us, but if these charts are accurate, they control more space than we do. Vrax stared at the data. His expression slowly changed from anger to something like respect, mixed with fear. He had spent decades building the Vraxian fleet. He had thought his people were the strongest military power in the galaxy. Now he wondered if humanity had been watching them all along, laughing quietly at their pride. On a small trading station 3 sectors away, a human merchant named Yuri was having tea with several alien business partners. They had been asking questions about Earth's goods and manufacturing capacity. You've been preparing for this, haven't you? Asked one alien, a clever creature with 6 eyes. You've been setting up trade networks for months, Yuri smiled.
Humanity likes to be ready.
We knew that once the galaxy saw what we could really do, things would change quickly. I wanted to make sure we had friends in the right places. What exactly are they going to see? Something that will make them realize humanity isn't weak or small, Yuri said softly. Something that will change how every species thinks about power and survival. Back at the station, the last 12 hours crawled by like years. The Vraxian fleet stayed in position, but they powered down their weapons. Even Vrax wasn't foolish enough to shoot at something he didn't understand. Every sensor in 3 sectors was pointed at the approaching mass. Scientists from every species worked together, trying to understand what they were seeing. The energy readings were incredible. Whatever was coming used more power in 1 second than most planets used in a year. Taesung stood on his bridge watching the countdown. 10 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours. The mass kept getting closer, moving with impossible precision. Dr. Mi-young couldn't stop checking her calculations. If this is really a ship, she said to anyone listening, then humanity has mastered technologies we've barely dreamed about. 0-point energy extraction, gravitational manipulation on a planetary scale, manufacturing capacity beyond anything in the galaxy. We have, said Ambassador Jisun, who had returned to the Meridian's Hope. We've had these technologies for over a century. We just didn't see any reason to show them off until now. Why now? Taesung asked. Because now the galaxy is ready to listen. 2 days ago they laughed at us. Tomorrow they will ask to be our partners. That's the difference between being dismissed and being respected. Sometimes you have to show your strength to achieve peace. The final hour arrived. Every screen in the station showed the same thing. Empty space at the edge of the system, where something massive was about to appear. Commander Hyunsik sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Endeavor, watching his own countdown. His ship had been traveling for 3 weeks to reach this moment. 3 weeks of careful acceleration and deceleration, making sure they arrived exactly on time, all. Stations report ready, said his first officer. Engineering report 0 point. Reactors at optimal levels, said Engineer Da-un from deep in the ship's massive power core. Hyun-sik smiled. Then let's give them something to remember. Drop us out of FTL in 30 seconds, and make sure all external lights are on. I want them to see everything. He opened a channel to Ambassador Ji-sun. We're here, Ambassador. Time to show them what humanity really is. Proceed, Commander, Ji-sun replied. Let's change the galaxy. The countdown reached 0. Space twisted at the edge of the Veltara system. Reality bent and folded as something impossibly massive dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Light bloomed in the darkness like a new sun being born, and then they saw it. The eternal endeavor hung in space like a dream made real. High Counselor Theron stood frozen at his viewing screen, his 3-century-old mind struggling to process what his eyes reported. Elder Vrax felt his knees go weak. Scientists across 47 species stopped breathing. The ship was 340 kilometers long. It wasn't just big. Big didn't capture what they were seeing. The Eternal Endeavor was a world unto itself. Its hull stretched across the darkness like a floating city, studded with thousands of lights that marked districts, parks, residential zones, and industrial sectors. Massive biodomes rose from its surface like glass mountains, and through them, you could see forests and lakes reflecting artificial sunlight. Get me a visual analysis, Theron whispered, his voice barely working. I need to know if my eyes are lying to me. They're not, High Counselor, replied his science officer, a being who had studied astrophysics for 60 years and now sounded like a frightened child. The ship is real. The mass readings are accurate. That vessel is larger than most of our capital cities, and it's maintaining perfect orbital position despite its size. From his command chair, Commander Hyun-sik watched his screens showing the station's reaction. He could see hundreds of ships scrambling to adjust their positions, sensors going wild, communications channels overloading with panicked messages. He kept his expression calm and professional. All systems stable, reported his first officer. We're holding position exactly as planned. Good. Open a channel to the Galactic Assembly. Let's introduce ourselves properly. On the station, every screen suddenly showed the same image. A human man in a dark blue uniform, sitting calmly in a command chair that looked small against the massive bridge behind him. Through the windows behind Hyun-sik, they could see the curve of the ship's hull stretching away into the distance. Greetings to the Galactic Assembly, Hyun-sik said, his voice steady and clear. I am Commander Hyun-sik of the human Titan-class vessel Eternal Endeavor. We come in peace and we come prepared for anything else. A scientist named Zaltarine was frantically calculating numbers on his personal computer. He was part of a neutral observer species, known for their mathematical brilliance. His tentacles shook as he worked. This is impossible, he muttered. The energy requirements to move something that massive. They'd need to extract power from quantum foam itself. 0-point energy extraction at scales we've only theorized about. He looked up at his colleagues with wide eyes. Humanity has mastered technologies we thought were centuries away from practical application. Deep in the engineering section of the Eternal Endeavor, Engineer Da-on monitored her systems with pride. She had helped design these power cores, working with teams of thousands over 2 decades. The ship's 12 0-point reactors hummed with barely a fraction of their potential output. They could power the vessel for 10,000 years without refueling. The assembly is requesting a ship tour, her assistant reported. Da-un smiled. Tell them we'd be happy to host visitors. I think they're going to be very surprised by what they see. Elder Vrax stood on his flagship, staring at the human vessel that made his ship look like a toy boat beside an ocean liner. His flagship was 8 kilometers long. He had thought it was the largest warship ever built. Now he understood how foolish that pride had been. His navigator Pelkoth stood beside him running more calculations. Sir, I'm detecting thousands of smaller vessels inside the main ship. Launch bays, docking stations, internal shipyards. This one ship carries an entire fleet. How many? Pelkoth's voice shook. At least 10,000 individual craft ranging from fighters to frigates. And sir, I'm detecting what look like manufacturing facilities. This ship can build more vessels while traveling. Vrax closed his eyes. His entire military strategy developed over decades had just become obsolete. The Vraxian conquered had 5,000 warships scattered across their territory. Humanity had just revealed one ship that carried twice that many vessels inside it. And they said they have 12 of these? He asked quietly. That's what Ambassador Ji-sun claimed, sir. Vrax made a decision then that would change the future of his people. Get me a private channel to the human ambassador. I need to speak with her immediately. Ambassador Jisun received the request with a knowing smile. She had expected this. She opened the channel to find Vrax looking much less arrogant than he had 2 days ago. Ambassador, he said carefully, I believe I owe humanity an apology. I spoke from ignorance and pride. Apology accepted, Elder Vrax. No permanent harm was done. I must ask, why did you let us mock you? Why didn't you tell us about these ships from the beginning? Jisun's expression became serious. Would you have listened? Or would you have seen it as a threat and tried to unite the galaxy against us? We needed you to dismiss us first, to think we were weak. That way, when you saw the truth, you would understand that we have been patient. We have been careful. We revealed our strength only when necessary. And now you know what humanity is capable of. But more importantly, you know we didn't use this power to conquer or threaten. We came asking for partnership, not demanding submission. That tells you something about who we are. Vrax nodded slowly. It tells me humanity is wiser than we gave them credit for. It tells me I would rather have you as allies than enemies. That's exactly what we hoped you would say. Captain Taesung watched as shuttles began launching from the Eternal Endeavor, heading toward the station. Each shuttle carried representatives from different sections of the massive ship. Engineers, scientists, cultural liaisons, and security officers. They were about to show the galaxy what life was like aboard a Titan-class vessel. I still can't believe it, Taesung said to Ambassador Jisun. One ship changed everything. Not just one ship, Jisun corrected. One ship that represents humanity's philosophy. We don't build weapons of conquest. We build arcs of survival. The Titans were designed to save civilizations, not destroy them. That's the message we wanted to send. The first tour groups entered the Eternal Endeavor through airlocks that were themselves larger than most ships. They walked through corridors wide enough to drive vehicles down. They saw residential districts with millions of people living their lives. Schools, hospitals, parks, theaters, markets, all contained within the ship's hull. They visited the biodomes, walking through forests that had grown for 80 years since the ship's launch. They saw lakes stocked with fish, artificial weather systems creating gentle rain, animals grazing in meadows under a ceiling that perfectly mimicked a sky. The manufacturing centers left them speechless. Engineer Daun demonstrated how the ship could construct a 400-meter frigate in just 36 hours, using raw materials and automated assembly systems. We designed the Titans to be completely self-sufficient, she explained to a group of stunned alien engineers. They can establish new colonies, evacuate endangered populations, serve as mobile research stations, or operate as diplomatic centers. They're not warships, though they're heavily defended. They're mobile civilizations. High Counselor Theron toured the ship's central command area with Commander Hyun-sik. The Keltharian looked at the display showing the ship's status and shook his head in wonder. How long did it take to build this vessel? He asked. 43 years, Hyun-sik replied. From the first design concepts to final launch. It was a project that involved our entire civilization. Every colony contributed. Every scientist and engineer who wanted to help was welcomed. The Titans are humanity's greatest achievement, because they represent everyone working together toward one goal, ensuring our species would survive anything. And the other 11 ships? Stationed throughout human territory. Each one serves a different purpose, though all were built to the same basic design. Some are colony ships actively settling new worlds. Others are research vessels exploring the unknown. 2 serve as defensive fortresses for our core systems. The Eternal Endeavor was chosen as our diplomatic vessel because it best represents who we are. That evening, the Galactic Assembly held an emergency session, but this time there was no mockery, no dismissive laughter, no arrogant speeches about primitive humans with tiny ships. Instead, species after species stood and requested formal partnerships with humanity. Trade agreements, technology sharing, cultural exchanges. Even Elder Vrax formally requested a military alliance. Ambassador Jisun accepted them all with grace, knowing that this was exactly what Earth Command had planned for. Humanity had been patient. They had been careful. And now finally they were being treated as equals. The tours continued for 3 days. Every species sent their best scientists, military leaders, and diplomats to walk through the Eternal Endeavor. What they learned changed everything they thought they knew about power and civilization. Captain Bora commanded one of the escort destroyers that had accompanied the Titan-class ship. Her vessel, the Dawn's Shield, was modest by galactic standards, only 600 meters long. But when alien military analysts studied it, they found technology that surpassed most of the galaxy's finest warships. A group of Raxian officers toured her ship, led by navigator Pelkoth. He had become fascinated by human engineering and wanted to understand how they built such effective vessels. "Your shields are incredible," Pelkoth said, studying the readings. "They're at least 40% more efficient than ours, and your weapons systems. I've never seen targeting computers this accurate." Bora smiled. "The Titans and our escort fleet were designed together. We knew that if we built ships this large, we'd need to protect them. So we spent decades developing the best defensive technology we could imagine." "But the Titan isn't primarily a warship, is it?" Pelkoth asked. He had been thinking about this question since the arrival. "No, it's not." Bora led him to a viewing window where they could see the massive vessel floating peacefully in space. "The Titans are survival ships. They were built on one principle. Humanity will never go extinct. No matter what happens, these ships can preserve our civilization and rebuild it somewhere else. But they're so heavily armed. Defense, not offense," Bora explained. "We learned from Earth's history that sometimes peace isn't enough. Sometimes you need to be strong enough that no one dares attack you. The Titans can defend themselves against entire fleets, but they've never fired a weapon in anger. That's the point. They're so powerful that fighting them would be pointless." In another section of the ship, a historian named Jay Huan was meeting with groups of young aliens who wanted to understand human culture. He sat in a comfortable room decorated with images from Earth, drinking tea with a dozen curious visitors. "Why did you build them?" asked a young Keltharian, barely 50 years old. "If you already had FTL travel and colony worlds, why spend so much time and resources building these massive ships?" Jaehwan thought carefully about his answer. "Do you know about the Great Diaspora?" They shook their heads. 200 years ago, humanity achieved faster than light travel. We started spreading to the stars, building colonies on dozens of worlds. But our leaders remembered something important from Earth's history. They remembered that civilizations can fall. Disasters can happen, wars, plagues, natural catastrophes. On Earth, we almost destroyed ourselves several times. He paused, letting them absorb this. So they asked a question. What if something terrible happened to Earth? What if a plague spread through our colonies? What if we faced an enemy we couldn't defeat? How would humanity survive? "The Titans," breathed the young Keltharian. "Exactly. We decided to build 12 ships that could carry our entire civilization if necessary. Each Titan can operate independently for 10,000 years. They have farms, factories, schools, hospitals, everything needed for life. If every human colony world was destroyed tomorrow, these 12 ships could rebuild our species from nothing. A scientist from another species, a creature with multiple eyes named Rixala, had been listening quietly. But that seems defensive, almost fearful. Most species build weapons to project power. You built arcs to ensure survival. Is survival not the ultimate form of power?" Jaehwan asked gently. "What good is conquering the galaxy if your civilization can be wiped out by one catastrophe?" "We chose to invest in permanence, not domination." Rixala thought about this for a long time. Her species had spent centuries building a powerful navy to protect their territory. But they had never thought about what would happen if their home worlds were lost. Suddenly, she saw humanity's wisdom. They had planned not for victory, but for endurance. Dr. Mi-young was giving a presentation to a gathered group of scientists in one of the Titan's research centers. The room was packed with brilliant minds from across the galaxy, all eager to understand human technology. "Zero-point energy," she explained, showing diagrams on a holographic display, "is energy extracted from quantum vacuum fluctuations. The theory has been known to many species for centuries, but making it practical required solving thousands of engineering problems." She showed them schematics of the power cores, simplified so they could understand the basic principles. Each Titan has 12 of these reactors. Together they generate more power than most star systems use in a year. And they'll keep generating that power for millennia. "Why do you need so much power?" asked an alien engineer. "Because the Titans don't just move through space. They terraform planets. They manufacture everything from starships to medicine. They can power defensive shields strong enough to stop asteroid impacts. They're designed to do anything a civilization might need anywhere in the galaxy, without outside help. Zaltarin, the mathematician, had become one of humanity's strongest advocates. He spent hours running calculations, analyzing data, and discussing human technology with anyone who would listen. Now he stood before the Galactic Assembly presenting his findings. "The implications are staggering," he said, his tentacles gesturing at charts and graphs. "Humanity doesn't just have impressive ships. They have a completely different approach to civilization. Most of us think in terms of planets and solar systems. We defend territory. We control resources. But humanity thinks in terms of species survival." He brought up an image of all 12 Titan-class ships, scattered across human space. These vessels represent a distributed civilization. Humanity doesn't have one capital world that can be conquered. They don't have a single point of failure. If you destroyed Earth tomorrow, humanity would continue. If you destroyed half their colonies, they'd rebuild. You literally cannot eliminate them without hunting down 12 mobile civilizations, each one protected by fleets and advanced technology. "Are you saying they're invincible?" asked High Counselor Theron. "No, I'm saying they're persistent. They've engineered themselves to survive anything, and that honored council is more powerful than any weapon." Elder Vrax had been thinking deeply since his conversation with Ambassador Ji-sun. His military advisors kept bringing him reports about human capabilities, and each report made their situation clearer. The Vraxian conquered was strong, but humanity was prepared for anything. He requested a private meeting with Ji-sun aboard the Eternal Endeavor. She met him in a simple conference room with windows overlooking the ship's central biodome. "Your ship is magnificent," Vrax said honestly. "I've spent 3 days studying it and I'm still discovering new wonders." "Thank you, Elder Vrax. We're proud of what we've built." "I need to know something," Vrax said seriously. "If we had attacked you 2 days ago when you first arrived, what would have happened?" Ji-sun met his eyes calmly. "The Meridian's hope would have defended itself. We would have disabled your ships without destroying them, then left the system, and you would have learned about the Titans when one of them came to investigate why you attacked unprovoked. And then we would have had a very different conversation, one where humanity was defending itself instead of offering friendship. Your actions determined how we responded, Elder Vrax. That's always been our policy." Vrax nodded slowly. "You gave us the chance to be wise. I appreciate that. And I apologize again for my arrogance. We understand pride, Elder. All strong civilizations have it. The difference is learning when to set it aside." Later that evening, Ambassador Ji-sun stood in the observation deck with Captain Tai-sung, Captain Bo-Ra, and several other human officers. They watched the station below, now bustling with activity as dozens of species negotiated trade agreements and partnerships with humanity. "We did it," Tai-sung said softly. "We're no longer the dismissed newcomers. We're partners, equals," Bo-Ra added. "They see us as equals now." Ji-sun nodded, satisfied. "This is what Earth Command hoped for. We could have arrived with all 12 Titans and demanded respect. But that would have made us conquerors, not partners. Instead, we showed patience. We endured insults. And when we finally revealed our strength, they understood we could have demanded anything from the start but chose not to." "What happens now?" asked Tai-sung. "Now we begin the real work," Ji-sun replied. "Sharing technology, building friendships, teaching other species how to think about long-term survival instead of short-term power. The Titans changed how the galaxy sees us. Now we need to change how the galaxy thinks about the future." She smiled, watching the stars, "and I think we're going to succeed." The vote took place on the 7th day after the Eternal Endeavor's arrival. High Counselor Theron called the Galactic Assembly to order, and every seat was filled. The aliens who had laughed at humanity a week ago now sat quietly, waiting to make the most important decision in 500 years. Ambassador Ji-sun stood on the central platform one final time. She wore the same simple gray uniform, but now when she spoke, everyone listened. "Humanity thanks the Assembly for this opportunity," she said clearly. "We came here seeking partnership, not power. We came hoping to learn from you and to share what we've learned. The past week has shown us that this galaxy has room for cooperation, for friendship, and for a future where all species work together. We ask now for full recognition as an equal member of this Assembly." High Counselor Theron stood. "The Assembly will now vote. Those in favor of granting humanity full membership and equal status." One by one, every species representative stood. Even those who had been most skeptical, most dismissive, rose to their feet. The vote was unanimous. Then, by the power granted to me, Theron announced, I welcome humanity as full members of the Galactic Assembly. May our partnership bring prosperity to all. The hall erupted in cheers. Ji-sun bowed respectfully, but inside she felt a wave of relief and pride. 20 years of planning, 2 decades of patient work, and it had all led to this moment. Elder Vrax was one of the first to approach her after the vote. Ambassador, the Vraxian conquered would like to propose a joint military exercise. We wish to learn from your defensive strategies. We would be honored, Elder Vrax. But might I suggest we also discuss how to build ships focused on survival rather than conquest? I think your people would benefit from Titan-class technology adapted to your needs. Vrax's eyes widened. You would share that technology? With trusted partners, yes. The point of the Titans was never to keep power for ourselves. It was to ensure civilizations can survive. If we can help other species achieve the same security, everyone benefits. Within days, the Eternal Endeavor began its transformation from warship to diplomatic station. Commander Hyun-sik authorized sections of the ship to be converted into embassies, trade centers, and cultural exchange zones. Thousands of aliens moved aboard, establishing offices and homes. Captain Tae-sung found himself working with Navigator Pelkoth to plan the first joint exploration mission. They sat in a planning room studying star charts of unexplored regions. I never thought I'd be working with humans, Pelkoth admitted. A week ago I thought you were just another minor species trying to seem important. Tae-sung laughed. And now? Now I think we Vraxians have been too focused on fighting. You've shown us there's more to strength than weapons. My people need to learn that. We can teach each other, Tae-sung said. Your species has centuries of experience we lack. Your navigation techniques are brilliant. Together we can explore regions neither of us could reach alone. In the trading districts of the Titan, Merchant Yuri was busier than ever. She had spent months preparing for this moment. And now aliens from across the galaxy wanted to trade with humanity. Her office was packed with representatives from dozens of species. Human manufacturing technology is remarkable, said one merchant, a creature covered in blue fur. Our people would pay well for access to your fabrication systems. We're willing to trade, Yuri replied, but we want more than just profit. We want partnerships. We want to help your species build better ships, create better medicine, improve your quality of life. Money is fine, but friendship is better. The merchant looked surprised, then pleased. That's not how most species approach trade, but I like it. My people will like it too. Dr. Mi-young and Zaltaran had become close friends over the week. They now work together in a laboratory aboard the Titan, combining human innovation with alien curiosity. They were designing a new type of research station that could study dangerous phenomena without risking lives. Your mathematics are incredible, Mi-young said, reviewing Zaltaran's calculations. This design is 30% more efficient than what I had planned. And your engineering makes it practical, Zaltaran replied. I've theorized about these systems for years, but I could never figure out how to build them. Your people think differently. You see solutions where we see problems. Maybe that's because we've had to solve so many problems to survive. Earth wasn't always peaceful. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. That teaches you to find solutions or die. And now you share those solutions with us. That's the mark of true wisdom. High Counselor Theron invited Ambassador Ji-sun to a private dinner in his quarters. The old Kiltharian had lived through 3 centuries of galactic politics, but he admitted he had never seen anything like humanity's approach. You played us perfectly, he said over wine from his homeworld. You let us underestimate you, then revealed your strength in a way that made us want to be your partners instead of your enemies. That took incredible patience. It took understanding, Ji-sun corrected gently. We studied your species for 50 years before making contact. We learned how the galaxy works. We knew that if we arrived demanding respect, you would unite against us out of fear. But if we arrived humbly and then proved our worth, you would welcome us. And the timing? Bringing the Titan exactly when you did? Ji-sun smiled. That was about showing you who we really are. The Meridian's hope represents our willingness to be modest. The Eternal Endeavor represents our ability to survive anything. Together they tell a complete story about humanity. You're remarkable, Theron said honestly. All of you. I think humanity will change this galaxy in ways we cannot yet imagine. We hope so. But we'll do it together with you, not instead of you. 3 weeks after the vote, Admiral Sung Min arrived from Earth Command with a delegation of human leaders. They came to formalize the new partnerships and discuss the future. The Admiral was a stern woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for brilliant strategy. She met with Captain Tae-sung privately in his quarters. "You did well, Captain. The mission succeeded beyond our hopes. Ambassador Ji-sun deserves the credit, Admiral. She orchestrated everything. She did, and so did you, and everyone else who maintained patience under insults. That was the hardest part, wasn't it? Letting them mock us when you knew what was coming?" Tae-sung nodded. "It was. But it was worth it. Now we have partners instead of enemies." "Now comes the harder work," Sungmin said seriously. "Building those partnerships. Teaching without seeming arrogant. Learning without seeming weak. Sharing our technology without creating dependence. We need humanity to be seen as helpful, not as saviors or conquerors. We can do it. The last 3 weeks have shown me that most species are eager to cooperate once they see us as equals." On the day Admiral Sungmin was scheduled to leave, she made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. Standing before the assembly, she revealed that humanity would share the basic designs for Titan-class construction with any species who wanted them. "We don't want to be the only civilization with this capability," she explained. "We want every species to have the chance to ensure their own survival. We'll provide technical assistance, training, and resources, but the choice to build these vessels must be yours." The assembly sat in stunned silence. Then one by one species began requesting the designs. Not just military powers like the Vraxians, but smaller species who had never had the resources to build impressive ships before. Humanity was offering them a chance to protect themselves. Elder Vrax approached Admiral Sungmin after the announcement. "This is unprecedented. You're giving away your greatest advantage." "It's not an advantage if everyone has it," Sungmin replied. "That's the point. We want a galaxy where every civilization can survive disasters, where no single catastrophe can wipe out a species. If we all build Titans, we all become more secure. But what if someone uses these ships against you? Then we defend ourselves. But we believe that species who have the security of Titans will be less likely to attack others. When you know your civilization is safe, you don't need to conquer. You can focus on building instead of fighting." Historian Jae Hwan held his last class aboard the Titan before returning to Earth. He sat with a group of young aliens from various species, all of them eager to learn more about humanity. "Remember what you've seen here," he told them. "The Titans weren't built to intimidate you. They were built to ensure that humanity would always have a home, no matter what happened. That's the lesson we want to share. Think about survival, not just success. Plan for the long term, not just the next year. Build for your children's children, not just for yourself." "Will other species really build their own Titans?" asked a young Vraxian. "Some will. Others will find different solutions to the same problem. The important thing is thinking about civilizational resilience. How do you make sure your people survive for thousands of years? That's the question every species should be asking." Captain Tae-sung stood on the bridge of the Meridian's Hope, preparing for his next mission. He and Pelkoth would be leading the first joint exploration fleet into unexplored space. 3 human ships and 5 Vraxian vessels working together. "Nervous?" asked Pelkoth, who had transferred to serve as his navigation officer. "Excited," Tae-sung corrected. "A month ago we were dismissed as primitives.